England hang on in the final minutes to defeat Samoa by only a single point, with a late score from Danny Care and conversion from Owen Farrell swinging the score in England's favour. It was a very close match throughout, a very nervous watch as an England supporter, right till the last minute. Danny Care putting in a last-ditch tackle to save England from what was certain defeat as the Samoans looked to cross in the dying stages. Look, this is not a game England would like leading into the knockout stages. They probably didn't deserve to win the game if you looked at the game as a whole. Very scrappy, loads of errors, really poor discipline throughout. Look, I don't want to take too much away from Samoa. It did feel like England sort of left the front door open for Samoa to really get a foothold in the game, but the Samoans definitely took the most of it. They benefited from some really scrappy England attacking moves where there was lots of spilled ball and lots of opportunities for Samoa to almost go the length at points. That being said, Samoa deserve an awful lot of credit. They fought for everything in that game, and after going 8-0 down early on, they really did fight their way back in the game, and they really combated what was a decent driving maul from England at the start. They managed to really improve their maul D throughout the game and adapt to the way England played. And then Samoa, how dangerous did they look in the back line? As I said, from loose England play or even from just Samoan set pieces, they really went wide to wide and really challenged the England back line. Obviously, with England having two fly halves on the pitch in Ford and Farrell, they really did well to spot some weaknesses there, sending big ball carriers down both Ford and Farrell's lanes. So Samoa did incredibly well. And look, if there's a little bit more of a clinical edge to the Samoan teams, even if they had some more game time together, they could sure come away with the victory in this game. It's a very physical game throughout, some huge hits, some legal, some not. Samoans did get pinged a few times for tackles off the ball, which ultimately resulted in a yellow card for Manu at the end. There was a common theme throughout the game of real high physicality. As I said, some was legal, some wasn't, but it made for a really compelling watch. Now I'm just going to go through some things in which both teams did well and not so well. I thought the maul and scrum from England were two positives from the game. The Samoans did win a couple scrums and a penalty or two, I believe. So the Samoans will be relatively happy with the scrum, but ultimately it was a set piece of a scrum that led to England with Danny Care crossing late on in the game. Now, some things that England didn't do well, there's plenty of them. Handling errors were really awful from England. Sort of playing out of positions in which we really didn't need to play out of, with sort of really loose attacking platforms. If you look at teams like Ireland, New Zealand, the real world-class teams, and there's many more I could name, not so I don't upset any French or South African fans, for example, but those top teams play a tight structure from their own half. They don't just play wide to wide and big missed passes, going to floor. England were very loose. I slightly feel like England had a point to prove in terms of saying, no, our attack is actually very good, and they tried to score some tries via some expansive play, but it sort of brought England into more trouble. Players were getting isolated, which led to breakdown penalties, and the Samoans really did well to get over the ball and secure those turnovers. England really struggled to be clinical, especially in the second half. They only crossed for a try in sort of late 70 minutes in the game, so they went a long time without scoring a try. This was through many errors from England, knock-ons, some brilliant Samoan defence, and sort of, I'd say, poor decision making. Even with the last scrum, where England did go over for a try, England opted for that scrum, yet they wouldn't play off of the base of it for the first two attempts. They just tried to push for another scrum penalty. Now, if you've already got a penalty and you choose a scrum, why are we then playing for the scrum penalty? You need to use that attacking platform to then try and score, which eventually England did, but it wasn't as simple as that. On the first scrum, the ball spat out. Ben Earl lost control of it at the base, so really helter-skelter stuff from England. And extremely loose. Now, the Samoans, they look so dangerous on attack. They benefited from some sloppy play from England, but also generated some really good attacking platforms for themselves. Samoa scored the bulk of their points in the first half with only a penalty from Sopawanga in the second half. But it did look right until the end like Samoa could see out this game. Some brilliant performances from sort of the likes of Theo McFarland. And I thought the whole backline from Samoa just really clicked a lot better than England. And I thought they, especially in terms of line speed, they really took it to England. And England were very fortunate to come away with the win in the end. There were a couple tries chalked off for Samoa, which potentially took the sting out of their momentum. One try was disallowed for a real marginal knock-on. The try was even given, the conversion was taken, but then the new rules state that the referee can sort of chalk off a try up until the restart is taken. So Samoa were rather unfortunate. I mean, look, if I had to swing one way or another, I would say it was a knock-on, but it was so close. And when a referee awards a try and says on-field decision is a try, you really need to see compelling evidence to overturn that. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. I would say it was a knock-on from Samoa, but in terms of if I've already given the try, I'd rather debate whether that's compelling evidence to overturn it. And another try was chalked off for Samoa for a foot in touch, which was probably, well, it was the correct decision, but it just showed how much flair Samoa had. And yeah, they really took it to England and were unfortunate in some areas to not come away with another try. England got, I think it was 2 tries chalked off themselves. Chesham, who scored firstly in the match in the first sort of 10 minutes for his what would have been his second try, he got chalked off for a double movement, which maybe not. Look, I don't like it when referees see this in slow motion. I think things like a double movement, you need to see it in sort of full speed so you really get an idea of whether he's propelled himself a second time. Once again, I'd probably sit on the fence slightly, but I'd lean towards more of it being a double movement. And yeah, England got that one chalked off. And then it was a forward pass from Aratoji, one of the more clear-cut disallowed tries, with an offload to Joe Marchant, who went under the sticks, correctly so, chalked off. And then in terms of chalking off, Farrell let the timer run out for one of his penalties, which was an absolute mare. Farrell was talking to Andrew Brace about the continual offences in terms of off-the-ball tackles, which ultimately potentially led to the Manu yellow card via getting the sort of message in Andrew Brace's head. But he did miss the 3 points because he was sort of chatting with him, and then he got sort of maybe wrapped up in that, and then was unaware of the sort of the shot clock running down. I would say for Samoa, as much as their physicality was good, it also sort of lended itself to some poor discipline. These off-the-ball tackles just enabled England to sort of piggyback down the pitch. In terms of their discipline for both sides, Andrew Brace was incredibly hot on the going off your feet at rucks. If you know sort of slipped slightly going in and lost your footing, he'd then completely just give the penalty to against the offending side. So it was quite quick on the whistle there, which isn't potentially wrong or isn't potentially right. It's just the way the referee officiates the game, and I'd say both teams were relatively slow to adapt to Andrew Brace's refereeing style. But as a whole, from a neutral and entertaining watch, but from an England fan, it was incredibly nervy, and up until the Kerr try, I thought the game was almost gone. In terms of the tries, Chesham crossed early for England, and then a late try from Danny Kerr in the game. So those tries are probably looking at sort of 65, 70 minutes apart. So England once again struggling to cross the whitewash in any sort of regular phase play. And then Wong for Samoa crossed twice. The Samoan tries were some really, really good tries. Some good phase play, and then crossing the whitewash, and looked rather convincing in doing so. I mean, England, look, they sort of prided themselves on defence. I mean, they only conceded 1 try against Argentina, and then 0 against Japan, and 0 against Chile. So England, having conceded very little tries, probably expected better defensive sets from themselves. One thing I would consider is the fact that if you look at the Wales game against this weekend, with Wales already qualified and England already qualified, potentially both teams sort of let off the gas slightly in terms of defence, which is, I'd say defence at this level is mainly based upon sort of emotional intent. So with both teams, England and Wales previously qualifying, Wales sort of dropped off defensively against Georgia, and then England against Samoa conceding a couple tries each. So maybe that's a possible reason for it, or maybe it was simply the brilliance. Actually, I really don't want to take much away from Samoa. I thought Samoa were really, really quality throughout. And look, if they had a couple more attempts at the game, maybe if they had the advantage going into the second half, maybe they would have closed it out. But ultimately, England prevail in the end. Really worrying times going into the knockout stages, with England, Steve Borthwick really having no idea what his best starting 15 is, especially the fly half inside and outside centre combinations. It's changed pretty much week in, week out. I think this game further reinstates something that we already knew, which was that the forward Farrell doesn't work anymore. International defences are too physical now, and the likes of Farrell inside centre, as much as Farrell's an incredible fly half, you need to have some physicality and some gain line presence coming from that midfield. As we saw in this game, with Farrell getting the ball, he's not a ball carrier, so he distributes it, and then England are far behind the gain line, and there's so much reliance on Manu Tuilagi to gain some momentum. So that is definitely something England should look to change going forward. And England will face most likely Fiji if Fiji get past Portugal tomorrow. But a long way off their best, England. and I'm not quite sure what England's best looks like at the minute. Still problems in attack, and then a couple problems in defence, poor discipline, scrappiness, and ultimately came up against a really strong Samoa side. We saw the Samoans do really well in the Rugby World Cup warm-up matches against Ireland, and they really did well today, and were unlucky to not come away with a victory. All credit goes to Samoa. Really, really good performance from them. Showed that they really do deserve more game time against the best in the world. I'm not saying England are best in the world, but sort of tier 1 nations. They deserve more of a chance because they really, really can compete. So that sums up my thoughts for the game. Please do let me know in the comment section down below what your takeaways from the game were. Look, there's a lot to worry about from an English perspective, so maybe pick out a couple things in which they really need to tighten up on, and then ultimately talk about how good Samoa were, because they really deserve a lot of credit from this game. But that concludes my thoughts, and thank you very much for watching.